Yellen, are you recording on your device? Oh, there we go. Welcome everyone to the Marine Flare webinar. This webinar will be recorded so that we can use it for future reference. If you don't want to be on the recording, feel free to turn your camera off. You can use the chat while we're presenting. It's going to be a smaller group, so we're going to keep it kind of casual. We figured if you have questions as we're going through the slide, we can pause at any point. We can also read the chat. We have several CPSC staff members on the webinar today so that we can actually kind of keep the chat lively. So feel free to, as things pop into your head, just let us know, and let's keep this casual. Let's have a good conversation about marine flares, one of the most random products in the waste stream, but also one of the most problematic. So as we have people joining us today, we welcome everybody, and we'll go to the next slide and introduce today. The CPSC board. So CPSC board, we are a nonprofit. We are based in Sacramento, and our full board, next slide, will, you can see we have a lot of different representation. We have private business, local government, we have waste haulers, next slide, staff of 5, and actually we have 6. Joining us today, we have May Mayant joining us. She's a Fulbright scholar from Myanmar. We're so excited to have her join CPSC. She'll be working on several product types, including marine flares. Next slide. And as you can see throughout California, a lot of the different jurisdictions are part of CPSC's network. Next slide. And if you aren't on this network and want to get engaged, some of the benefits of being part of CPSC is not only to get kind of in on some of these grant projects, but you also get in on some of our weekly and monthly calls. So part of CPSC's mission is to create waste management programs that don't directly impact our local government's garbage rates. So it's my job to make everyone's garbage rate not go up, but getting more access to recycling and more access to waste disposal. Next slide. So we're here today to talk about how that applies to marine flares, and really, it's one of those problematic product types that we'll talk about in more detail. But for years now, CPSC's funders have flagged marine flares as one of the most problematic products in our waste stream, and it doesn't have a permanent program. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, what are some of the problems with it as a product type, and what are the steps that we need to do to get a permanent program? In the meantime, we have grants funded by CalRecycle and local government grants, but those are just temporary. Those grants we'll talk about can do temporary collection, we can do education, we can promote reusables, which is ultimately the best answer. But whatever we do, we at CPSC align with our mission, and that's ultimately to engage the industry. If we were to create a collection program that was government funded for this product type, you'll see today the costs are so extreme. So our goal at CPSC is to engage not only the manufacturers of these flares, but other stakeholders, the Coast Guard, the boating community, and get everyone to be part of the solution. Today, we're going to welcome our first speaker and our main speaker, who's our guest of honor, Vivian. Vivian works with the Green Marinas and Green Boaters Network with the Coastal Commission and the state parks. So we're going to hand it over to her, and she's going to go through a lot of the work that her team has been doing over the last few years to really start the marine flare work in the state that has gotten us to where we are today.
All right, almost there. Let me see here. All right, can you see my screen? All right. So happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you, Joanne, and all of your team for this partnership. My name is Vivian Matuk. I'm the Environmental Boating Program Manager for both the California State Parks and the California Coastal Commission. Have been working on this expired marine flare issue for almost a decade. So very excited to be here and see some of the goals and outcomes from the work we started with other sister agencies are coming to a reality. So I'm going to start from a bird's eye view perspective and just telling you what marine flares are and what kind of boaters or boats need to comply with these requirements, why expired marine flares are considered hazardous waste, why this is an issue in California, and some of the different steps the state has been taken to tackle this issue. So let's start from a bird's eye view perspective. So what are marine flares? Marine flares are a type of pyrotechnic devices that either produce a brilliant light or a plume of colorful smoke as a visual distress signal to attract the attention, in this case, mainly for the enforcement agencies or rescue agencies to try to pinpoint the location of a boater in case of an emergency. There are two common types: handheld and aerial flares. And regardless of the type, they have to be manufactured up to Coast Guard specifications. So what are the type of boats that are required by law to carry these flares? Basically are those vessels that are longer than 16 feet in length, operating in certain areas, as you can see in this slide: coastal waters, Great Lakes, territorial seas, and waters directly connected to them. Like in any rule, there are some exceptions. And the exceptions include recreational boats that are less than 16 feet in length, open sail boats that are less than 26 feet in length and are not equipped with propulsion machinery, and manually propelled boats. But even though those are the exceptions, when they are operating from sunset to sunrise, they are required to carry on board nighttime distress signals. So based on the federal law, boaters are required to carry a minimum of 3 daytime and 3 nighttime use flares to meet the visual distress signal requirements, or only 3 pyrotechnic flares that are approved for both daytime and nighttime. So just to give you an example, because probably you don't know, the red color handheld and the aerial pyrotechnic flares are considered approved for both daytime and nighttime use. And the orange color flares are approved for daytime use. In addition, more about regulations here. The average shelf life for pyrotechnic devices is between 36 to 42 months from the manufacture date. And the law is very clear that boaters need to carry on board flares that are, of course, in serviceable condition and have not expired. Because let's say that randomly the Coast Guard boards your vessel, you can get a fine of around $1,100 if you are not complying with the law. So why marine flares are considered hazardous? So basically, based on one of our sister agencies that have full jurisdiction over this topic, which is the California Department of Toxic Substances Control. From now on, we're going to refer to them as DTSC. Sorry, yes, I'm with the government and we love acronyms, but the names are so long. So basically, when these flares are no longer used for their intended purposes, they are considered hazardous waste because they are toxic, reactive, and ignitionable, right? They have really nasty components that are really, that can create a lot of water quality or ecosystem impacts, as well as impacts into human health. So we have a bunch of the regular flares or the pyrotechnic flares that have all the components that you see in the slide. Some of them are listed on the EPA's Toxic Substances Control Act inventory list, and some of them, like the perchlorates, are in the list of or recognized as a water and human health pollutant of concern. So why are expired marine flares an issue in our state? So it turns out that a few years back, I work directly with the boating community. We have a great partnership with boaters all over the state, marinas, yacht clubs, as well as boatyards. And in our education and outreach efforts, working with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, with the Coast Guard, and also power squadrons, it was brought to our attention that there wasn't a way to properly dispose of marine flares, expired marine flares. I didn't know about that, and I started doing myself some research, and then I identify, oh my God, this is a big issue. So I called my sister agencies, because the two agencies that I represent do not have jurisdiction over this topic, even though the Department of Boating and Waterways at that time, which is now the Division of Boating and Waterways under State Parks, is the most important boating and safety and environmentally related agency. We don't have jurisdiction over the disposal of them. So we put together a working group with DTSC, Cal Recycle, my two agencies, several CUPAs, also the Governor's Office of Emergency Services in some counties, cities and counties. And we started working, and we conducted a lot of research, not only at a state level, but nationally. And we identified that was a huge problem, not only for California, but other states. Other states were collecting them, paying tons of money, not knowing exactly what they were doing. Then when we met with the Department of Transportation, we realized that a lot of the states, and I'm not going to say which states, were collecting them without fulfilling full requirements. So we were like, oh my God. So here we decided to do a bunch of different research, even with boating facilities, and we realized that it was a big issue, people abandoning the expired marine flares at marinas, at boatyards, harbors, you name it. So we realized about that, and we also calculated that approximately on an annual basis, California was producing over 174,000 expired marine flares. That, of course, is outrageous. So why is a problem here in California? It turns out that we don't have currently a permitted facility where we can collect, treat, and properly dispose of the flares. At the national level, there are only 3 in Utah, Missouri, and Louisiana. And I think one of them is actually going to close, if I'm not mistaken, which makes the problem really, really bad. And they cannot be shipped by airlines, or it has to be on the ground. So as you can imagine, that makes it really expensive. Joanne mentioned at the beginning of the introduction here that it could range, for example, from $7 to $50 per flare, which is outrageous. And also there's a minimum fee of approximately $1,700 to $2,500 for transportation. So it's really, really crazy. So we started the research, as I mentioned to you already, and we decided, okay, we're going to be here trying to find a solution, which is not easy because it's very expensive. But we were able to work with the TSC and Cal Recycle, and I know some of my colleagues with Cal Recycle are joining us today, and they did a fantastic job. We applaud their effort that as a result of our work, they were able to establish a grant to help local municipalities to apply and conduct these kind of collection events. We understand this is not the solution, but believe me, talking to other states in the nation, we are way ahead of the game in terms of this, which is very exciting to see California again leading this environmental issue. Talking to some of my Cal Recycle colleagues this week, they said that the upcoming grant cycle should be announced sometime within the next month or so. So make sure that all the counties please apply, because as you know, if we don't apply, we don't use the money, guess what's going to happen? And we really need all these counties to apply. In addition to that, because we are the main agency dealing with boaters, who are the main users of these flares, we have done a lot of work in terms of education. So based on our research, we have created a statewide website about marine flares that contains also a fact sheet that we're constantly sharing with the boaters and also with anyone who is interested about this issue, educating them about what is a problem and some of the options as well. And we have put together some best recommended practices in partnership with some of the agencies that are participating today, and of course with Joanne and her team, because we are everything also about education. So for example, telling the boaters, hey, if you have an issue where your county is not conducting one of these collection events that are temporary, make sure that you voice your concern and contact the Department of Toxic Substances Control just to see how they can help us. Also, when you talk to boaters, which is fantastic, in a lot of events, they said, oh, no, don't worry, we wait until there's a 4th of July or civic festivity, and then we're going just to shoot the flares. Well, we have met many times with the Coast Guard here in Coast Guard Island, in Alameda, etc. And that's totally illegal, actually. Firing a flare in a non-emergency is considered a false distress message, and it's a federal crime and is treated seriously by law enforcement. And I wanted just to share with you that it's a D felony, where you can go 6 years in prison, up to $250,000 in terms of fine, plus you have to reimburse the Coast Guard for whatever expenses they incur in order to respond to the emergency. I did a little bit of research, haven't found any incident in California, but in other parts of the nation where people have done that and the Coast Guard have been deployed, and there were a couple of fatalities because they couldn't pay attention to the real fatality because they were diverted to a non-real emergency situation. So this is serious. People don't take it seriously, but it's seriously. We also encourage the voters to push their counties to come together and apply for the grants, because we know there's a need. And also we're telling voters, please start transition to the new electronic distress signals. And we have in our information some benefits listed there that we created with a bunch of you who are here today. Which is just to tell people, they don't have expiration dates. You're not dealing with the toxicity of these chemicals. Anybody on your boat can operate the flares. You don't need to be trained. They last forever because, they are based on LED. They have all this technology. Some of them work off of battery Cs, which are available worldwide or universally. And you don't have to deal with the nasty chemicals that they tend to produce. Plus, in a long term, it's a good investment. So we have been educating voters about that. And thanks to that, back in 2019, we started with the collection events, thanks again to some of the grants from CalRecycle. Really quickly, again, we understand these are not the solution, right? But it's still at a very good step to take away from the circulation right now, some of those flares that are not good to be circulating there. So these are some of the results from the first counties that conducted, I would say nationwide, the first legally, perfectly conducted collection event. They went through a lot of work and they set up as an example in the rest of the nation. So even DOT was really excited to see for the first time one special permit coming from California. So this is great. So these are some of the results from back in 2018. These are some of the pictures at the event. Some of these events have been collected, have been happening at harbors or marinas or the actual HHW facility. So different case scenarios for all of them. And also in Southern California. So these are results from last year from Orange County. They did use some of the CalRecycle money. Port of LA has applied, but they haven't been used the CalRecycle money yet, but they have been collecting and conducting for 2 consecutive years events, paying out of their harbor pocket, and they have been pretty good collecting and removing these flares from the public. these are some of the pictures. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going just to transfer now, I think it's either to Yalin or Joanne, so we continue with the presentation.
Thank you. So here are the list of projects that we have active right now. So as Vivian mentioned, as the years go on, some are active grants, some end, some are starting in the next few weeks, months. So as we go through, we're going to go through each of these areas. Yalin's going to walk us through just some of the details of each jurisdiction and how they're involved with their Marine Flare event this year. Yalin, you want to take it?
Sorry, muted. Yes, so Alameda is kind of our longstanding partner, and they're actually currently not a holder of HD grant, but they were a past awardee of one of the first awardees, I believe, of the Carousel HD grant specifically for marine flares. And they have been hosting these marine flare events pretty much every year since. And they have a great turnout. I think they collect about 1,000+ fares every single year. And so I will kind of show you guys the dates for the marine flare collection events a little bit later on. But you can also sign up with a QR code on the side if you want to get notifications when we officially announce those dates. But they have a different system, unlike our other events, where they, unless they just people drop off, they actually have an appointment-based system. So every year they've been doing this appointment-based system where boaters sign up for appointment to drop off their marine flares. And so East Contra Costa County, written by Delta Diablo, was actually our CPSC's first marine flare grantee that worked focused on marine flares. So we hosted the first event with Delta Diablo alongside Alameda in 2021 to host the marine flare collection events. And alongside that, we also have Del Norte County that actually just finished off their HD33 grant cycle that combined both the marine flares, but also the reusable 1-pound propane cylinders. And they actually joined on to continue on with these grants with the HD39, which is focused solely on marine flares. And Nokira, you're on here too, so I don't know if you want to say anything about it. Oh, you're muted. Oh, okay. I think your microphone not be working, but we can come back to you. Gave a little bit late on a presentation as well.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, this system is really touchy. Yeah, it was a great program, and I'm looking forward to our next collection event. So I'm really glad that we're able to be part of this up here, because everything that we take out in this collection event doesn't end up in the ocean. So really happy about that. Thanks.
Yes, I guess another shout out for Del Norte that they also expanded their grant. They're also including Humboldt residents to be able to submit their marine flares, which is really a great collaboration. Next slide.
Yellen, before we move on, maybe let's give a little background on kind of how we made that decision, because I think that was a really important decision that really gave access to the entire North Coast. And basically, when we do our postcards and we do our announcements of the events, we found out that there were only like 300 registered boat owners in the entire county. So we figured if every single boat owner shows up and every single boat owner has 5 flares, we still won't meet our minimums, which are part of our contracts with the waste hauler. So by opening it up to Humboldt County, who's another underserved rural county, we were able to increase the access, and we actually had a wonderful turnout. And it turns out people in the North State are very neighborly, and everyone had a lot of fun connecting because the 2 Coast Guard auxiliary areas have close connections with the staff members. So thank you, Del Norte County, for that decision.
So just on to West Contra Costa, and I believe Lisa is on the webinar today too. They are our most recent Carousel grantee, and I believe they might be continuing on with a 41 as well to continue on these for another couple years. And they actually started a new system for us. So typically for these collection events, we do a 1-day drop off. However, West Contra Costa, with the help of Larry, container, well, actually did a multi-day collection event. And so they set up a collection system. And so over the course of a couple of weeks, boaters were able to come at any time during the opening hours of the HXW facility to drop off their marine flares, and then they were all collected on the one day when the truck came to collect the marine flares from all the other systems. And we're hoping to set this up, similar system up with the other boaters in order to expand the collection. And then Elisa just hopped on. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, sorry, I was turning my camera back on here. Hi, everybody. Yeah, and we did, this is the first time doing it and working with CPSC on this grant. And I was pulling up some statistics to share. We did do it for 20 days, October 5 through November 5 last year at our permanent HHW facility at 101 Pittsburgh Avenue in Richmond. And we collected almost 500 pounds of flares, so of various sizes, and that was a total of about 575 flares altogether. And we also exchanged for some of the reusable flares. People came in and we passed out some of the free flares through that, and then also using the coupon code to purchase the reusable flares as well. So I think it was a really successful program, and yeah, we're looking at doing it again. I think, Eileen, you're going to talk about the dates coming up, I think mid-August through mid-September, and then we are applying with you guys with CPSC for HD 41 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And so our new one is the City of Oceanside, which is HD 39. And so this is going to be a little bit of a shorter grant, but they're hosting their first collection event in the City of Oceanside, and we're going to be working with the Port of LA for this event to collect marine flares around the same time. I don't know, Vivian, if you had anything to add about the Port of LA as well. That's great.
No, but I can add on Oceanside because I think one of our concerns, and this goes with a lot of the other jurisdictions, is to have one event. Sometimes the boaters hear about it afterwards. It can cause a lot of confusion. So with this City of Oceanside event, because it's a smaller grant and there's a lot of pent up need, so it's just one city and there's a lot of coastal communities. And so we have to be very clear in our messaging that this is a one-time only special event. And we will have to turn people away that are not from the City of Oceanside because it's a grant. So we really can't go over budget. But that being said, there is a minimum number of flares that we have to collect. So if there's any non-residents, we could maybe say, hold on to the last 30 minutes. If there's still room, we could make room for you, because ultimately with these events, we don't want to turn anyone away because we know there's no other collection other than these events. So we really try our best to accommodate all the boaters and all the flares.
Yes. And so we're really excited to announce that we're actually going to be working with Marin County this year as well. And I believe Andrew is on here for Marin County to kind of host their also first marine color collection event. They are not currently an Cower Cycle grantee, but they will be applying for the next cycle in hopes that they can fund these for the next coming years. Andrew?
Yeah, sorry. Super excited to be a part of this. Yeah, this is going to be cool. We have lots of requests every year to get an event like this going, and so we're super excited to help out all of the boaters and to keep these things out of, the wrong places.
Yes, Vivian.
Yeah, and thank you, Marin County, for coming back. You guys applied back in 2019, and we were super excited, and you couldn't because of short staff and a bunch of different issues. So we're super excited. And Curtis, the marine operator at Clipper Yacht Harbor, is very excited. So I'm glad that that's going to happen.
So just giving a couple statistics from our most recent collection events in November 2020. As you can see, there's a lot of variation in the amount of flares that was collected. Alameda having a long-standing and also a very large boater community collected the most at over 1,000 flares, and that's pretty average for them. But as you can see, what we talked about, when I talked about the minimum disposal fee, since every grant has to pay the minimum disposal fee, the cost per flare is kind of based on how much they can pack in the truck. And so those areas that managed to collect more flares had a lower cost of disposal. And you also see Del Norte had a little bit of a higher cost because they were so far away from all the other jurisdictions. Every other jurisdiction was in the Bay Area. However, they were in the very, very North County. And so they pay a little bit more for disposal costs compared to the other counties because of that. But still, we were really happy with the turnout for Del Norte being such a small boater community because it's a very small county, to be able to collect over 500 flares in a one-day event.
Yellen, before we move on, we also want to say a big thank you to the other grant holders, because one of the main reasons Del Norte County was able to afford this is actually we split transportation evenly. For those of you who don't know, Del Norte County is the farthest north county that sits on the Oregon border. That's the coastal county. It takes 8 hours just to get to the Bay Area from there. So if you can imagine, when you're paying an ammunition truck with 2 overtime chemists, that extra day of just transport. So all the grant partners decided just to share all the transportation equitably. So a big thank you that that actually took the total cost down to a mere $22,000 for Del Norte. So without that support and camaraderie, I don't know if Del Norte could have even afforded it with the grant. So the other thing that I want to point out on this particular slide is the Delta Diablo. The $321 dollars per flare is a real number. And I also want to give a little more detail on Marie Ann's question on the minimum. So that's in our contract, because within the hazardous waste haulers, in order for them to even bring the ammunition truck, there needs to be a minimum. So in our contract, it's actually a dollar amount. That's the minimum. And so poundage wise, we could, I don't know the exact number of pounds that meets that minimum, but it's easy to kind of back calculate. So that's why we don't really turn anyone away, because actually the per pound disposal is not the big cost. The biggest cost is the trucking and the disposal transportation. So even within that, the biggest transportation is from the collection site to the disposal, which is Louisiana. So really a few extra boaters coming to the event is a minimal amount of money, when the biggest chunk of money is from California trucking. So another big thank you. So that 321 is because Delta Diablo did not meet that minimum. So we're actually reformatting the event to be more like the West Contra Costa event. So as Lisa mentioned, for 20 days at the permanent HHW, during their normal hours of operation, they collected the marine flares. Then they stored the flares safely until the Clean Harbors truck came through the day of the event, so the ammunition truck. One of the things that if you host an HHW, if you're on this call and this webinar and you have run an HHW, if that's the method you want to do, basically you have to change your PBRs and you have to include that as a normally collected item. Even if you only collect it during these temporary events, you do have to change that. So of the events you see on the list, all of them were at HHWs, but they're usually on the days that HHWs closed. So we prefer on Sundays to host these events. That way it doesn't actually conflict with the contracted HHW hauler. So there are different methods of collection and formatting these events. CPSC can help you with any of the methods that works best for your jurisdiction. But as you can see, we can also switch. So Delta Diablo is going from a 1-day event to a 20-day temporary collection. Next slide. And then I do see a question from Jimmy. I don't want to ignore that one. Why not charge a disposal fee at the time of purchase? I think that's actually a really good idea, and we'll talk about that in the policy section. But Vivian, did you want to mention that?
Yeah, really quickly, we explore that as a working group, and that required changing regulation. When DTSC issued a white paper, that's what they tried to push for, but it's like what we pay when we buy our electronics. That should be a fee associated with that, but that it's a long process, but it's feasible and it's on the table. Who knows when?
So Behold, the official announcement of our 2023 dates. So as Vivian mentioned, actually the incinerator in Louisiana that processes the marine flares is actually closing at the end of the year. So although for the last 3 years we've been trying to have them the same weekend of November, that didn't work out this year because that would have tripled our cost, as you can see with our grants. We really have to minimize our costs. So as a way to adapt, we've moved all the events to end of August and September. So I'm going to just kind of go through these because we have them in groups based on how the truck, the ammunition truck and the hazardous waste contracts worked out. But I will remind you that the QR code on the screen will get you signed up for our listserv, where you can get all of these announcements in your inbox. So the Southern California events are going to go first. That's the weekend after Labor Day. So we figured summer's coming to a close. They had all their fun. Great time to get their events together and for marine flare collection. So Oceanside will be early in the morning. Port of LA is later in the morning. So those are one-day events. Then the next weekend, September 16th through the 17th, are our next round of one-day events. As previously mentioned, West Contra Costa and Delta Diablo are going to do a 20-day collection. So during their normal hours of operation, starting August 14th, you can start bringing marine flares to those locations. But if you look at Del Norte, Marin, and Alameda County, those are the one-day events. We don't have the addresses on this slide, I'm realizing, but we are going to announce those on our website. We'll be announcing them to our listserv. So there's a lot of opportunity to get involved and to share those. We also plan on sending postcards to every registered boat owner. What we found in the past is we can boost all we want on social media, but boaters tend to be a little bit of an older community. So the direct postcards have had a really great turnout. So if you're a boater listening to this webinar, hopefully you receive your postcard soon and a wonderful reminder how to attend. If anyone has questions on the 2023 dates, go ahead and put them in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next slide. So we have challenges. We can plan these events all we want, but ultimately there's no permanent collection. And even if we had a permanent collection, that really doesn't address the toxicity or the ammunition, the explosivity that we talked about. Vivian gave a really good example of, people's lives are at hand. And when you misuse a safety device, you're not only breaking the law, but you're putting people's lives at hand. And so with these events, we have this opportunity to couple it with education, but we still hit these barriers, right? There's cost barriers, there's chemical barriers. We cannot change the way we manage these products unless the chemistries change of the products to make them less toxic and less hazardous. Next slide. So we do have a really wonderful opportunity, and this is an alternative. This is a reusable distress signal. There are 2 on the market that are Coast Guard approved, and Vivian and I just recently did go to a bunch of the websites to double check, do they have the words approved on there? And so basically, in order to be Coast Guard approved, that means the 3 required distress signals can be replaced with at least, one of these reusables. So some of the benefits, as previously mentioned, you can test them. You can have extra batteries. You can have children operate them. They won't pop your dinghy if it's an inflatable life, flotation device. There's hands down a lot of benefits. Some of the more technologically advanced ones, like the Sirius Signal ones, have Bluetooth. And what I truly feel is the market of innovation for this product type has just scratch the surface. I think when you look at some of the distress signals and emergency technologies used in other industries, whether it's search and rescue, whether it's, you know, in police or fire, I think this is just one more market that has a huge opportunity for electronics to improve on safety and functionality of this product type. So I do want to share a really good opportunity because we give these out for free. We feel like giving these into the hands of the boaters is a direct source reduction because they immediately have to buy fewer new disposable marine flares. So if you want a free distress signal, a reusable one, you can come to our events. And you can also have a coupon. There are coupons in the jurisdiction that compensate for $20 off plus the discount. But if you don't live in one of the grant areas, CPSC has a coupon, and so does Vivian, that gives 10% off a really great deal of the Sirius Signal reusable. The other opportunity is applying for a grant. I also want to give a big thank you to CalRecycle. As Vivian mentioned, you know, they listen to the working groups and they listen to the stakeholders. And in the last few rounds of grants with CalRecycle, they've actually adapted the rules so that we can buy this device in whole instead of just giving the coupon. And actually, the 4 or 5 years of the coupons, Lisa's jurisdiction was the first to ever cash in any of the coupons. So thank you, West Contra Costa. But the coupons, they really are a good opportunity when someone wants to upgrade from the free one to maybe the high-tech one. But what we found is just giving the device straight to the boater there's no replacement for that. So a big thank you to CalRecycle for, again, working with the communities to make sure that these grants work most effectively. So we do want to take a moment to talk about, you know, how do we actually change the entire landscape and how do we change these recovery programs for marine flares? And Vivian's right, you can't actually create a program without passing a law, whether it's at the state level or the local level. In order to create a permanent collection program and pass a local or state ordinance, there has to be political will. There also has to be funding. And so one of the questions was about a fee. And I know here in California, we're used to recycling fees. We're used to disposal fees because we know that's what it takes to make sure these products stay out of our environment and make sure that they're managed responsibly. When you look at plastics or you look at some of the other product types that don't have that kind of permanent funding, you see them accumulate in our environment and really have negative impacts on human and other marine life. So this is one of those product types that we want to create a permanent program, but we want to create one that really addresses the root of the problem, which is the inequitable costs for managing these and the toxics. So although a consumer fee is one option, there are a couple other options, and one would be a slow phase out of the pyrotechnics. I think once the LED and the reusable market really flourishes, there might not be a need for the single-use pyrotechnic ones, because really, if they get wet, sometimes they don't even work, and you can't test them. So there's a lot of other benefits other than just the reuse versus single use that the LEDs offer. The other thing is, you know, we can continue these grants. We can continue helping with the coordination. We can work with multiple agencies. I think one of the success of this program has been with our coordination with the Coast Guard, with the fire departments and the sheriff. But ultimately, again, that doesn't really solve kind of that permanent solution. So CPSC, we are one of the state experts in a policy type called extended producer responsibility. And this is a policy that actually has the manufacturers responsible for their product at the end of life. So that would mean maybe it's a fee when you buy it, or maybe it's just part of the price. So when you buy the product, that producer guarantees a program or some sort of disposal option at the end of life. I think one of the benefits of EPR is they can still work with government. It's a policy that can still work with boaters, and it has a lot of flexibility because it still allows to be market driven. So whether we're talking, single use, reusable, pyrotechnic, electronic, an EPR permanent program is really technologically agnostic. It works with each individual producer and their product type to make sure there's some sort of program at the end of life. And if an EPR program is successful, it will help phase out those toxics and help automatically go towards the reusables as a mechanism to save money by the producers. So we have a lot of policy options. I will say CPSC is very active in state legislation, and we have not seen any marine flare legislation in California or in other states. But that is something we're looking out for. And if that's something that we want to lead, I encourage you to get involved with CPSC. You can also email our board and let them know that marine flares is a top priority and a problem for your waste management programs. Next slide. The best way to stay in touch is to obviously join our listserv. We created a marine flare specific listserv because we have more and more of these marine flare grants. I am also really excited to announce that we are naming the Marine Flare campaign. Later this summer, we have a big announcement, hopefully before the events in September, that because there's so much momentum in this really particular product type, we're going to name the campaign, we're going to give it its own website, and we're going to give it a life of its own because we're finding and hearing from the boaters that it's a problem through and through. So you can scan that QR code or you can email us directly. Yep, you can go to the next slide. And as we mentioned, the grants, I think there's one more round of grants, not one, but the next round of grant that's going to be announced here in July. We usually have only 4 weeks to submit those applications. So if anyone's interested, I would contact us now. We can start scoping and working on the budget. So once those applications are released, we can fill them out and submit them right away. And we can indicate to CalRecycle by the number of marine flare grants, how important of a product type it is. So again, we can apply for grants. We can do kind of small projects. We didn't mention San Mateo on here because they're not doing collection and we didn't want to confuse anyone. But that's a really good example of a county who's just invested in reusables and education. So if you want to buy a reusable marine flare, we can get you the discount code and we can get you on our listserv. So what we'll do now is we'll just take questions. Again, it's a small group, so we can keep it casual. Feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, and let us know if you have any marine flare question. I do see that Yalin put the link to all the coupon codes that are linked on our website. Let's go Vivian, then Robert.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for all the counties that are joining us today that not necessarily you have to base your research and target outreach and marketing on registered boats. That's a little bit deceiving for several reasons. And again, I'm speaking from the expertise of my agency. A lot of boaters register their boat in a specific county, but that doesn't mean the boat is right there. Sometimes they have the boat in different areas because the sleeping fee for the boat is cheaper. For example, I'm in San Francisco and it's very expensive here. So people may go to, I don't know, the East Bay or the North Bay. So that's always important to think about that. And also the fact that throughout these years, and talking to boaters, like this year we participated in 2 boat shows, pretty big, and we used the cards from that we put together with the California Product Stewardship Council just to motivate boaters to sign. It's fascinating to see that people don't know about this problem just until they try to get rid of that and they go to the marine operator and they're like, no, just don't even think about giving me this. And talking to marine operators across the state, specifically more or mainly on the coast, they know that it's a big issue about abandoning them in their facility. So wanted just to bring that to everybody's attention. We work a lot on efforts like this with the Recreational Boaters of California, who are big supporters of this effort, as well as both the Association of Yacht Clubs in both Northern and Southern California. In addition to that, with the private and public marinas and harbors. So yeah, we're ready and excited to continue to support these efforts. Again, it's not the solution, but believe me, if you talk to other states, especially the top 4 states with boaters in the United States, they don't have a program like this. So in a way, I want always to say, let's get excited and happy for where we are and the resources that we have. Not perfect situation, we can improve, but we're heading the good direction.
Thank you. Robert.
Yes. So I'm wondering if maybe you could elaborate a little more or repeat what you said regarding the change in PBR for HHWs about collecting and then waiting and storing and then waiting for pickup later.
Yeah. So if you are planning on bringing marine flares into your normal operating hours to your permanent, like permitted HHW, you do have to change your PBR. So you'll work with your Coupa on that. You'll also have to, you don't necessarily have to change your contract though, because if you're doing it through a grant. So because we paid for disposal separately, the grant partners who brought them in didn't actually have to change their contract with their HHW operator. So that being said, during normal operating hours, the normal HHW staff took them out of the cars, stored them in a magazine. They can be stored up to a year, I believe, but they were really only stored for 4 weeks when the big ammunition truck came by. That's only if you're using your permanent HHW. For the other events we did at the HHW, but on days that are not normal HHW days, we did not have to change the PBRs. We just did a special contract for those special days. I will say Marin and Oceanside are doing the events at the marinas and harbors in the parking lot. So I will say it's more challenging, but I think those are a little more accessible to the boaters. And I say challenging just for us planning it, just a few more forms. But ultimately, both are really great options. And so it really depends on kind of the community. Vivian, did you have anything to add? Okay, did that help, Robert?
Yes, thank you.
Let's do Marie and then Kira. Marie Ann, are you, oh, there you are. Are you able to unmute?
Hello?
Hi, I can
Oh,
hear you.
I actually had the same question as Robert about the PPRs. So I'm good right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
wonderful. And if you reach out and your Coupa has questions, we're more than happy to work with them. Kira.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Robert and Marie. We all, I think, had the same question about the PBRs. I also had a question about the magazine. And was that something that was purchased with grant funds?
No, but we could probably do that with our 39s because you don't have them. And
Right,
we know with the rural counties and when there's not a lot of boaters, the slow collection does make the most effective.
It really does make a lot of sense. The other thing that I was thinking is that we do not have a permanent HHW facility, but Humboldt does. And maybe we could work something out with the slow collection being at Humboldt and then bringing it up.
That's actually a really good idea. And actually, we probably wouldn't have to bring it up because the truck has to go
Has to go down.
down.
Oh.
No one's further up than you, Kira.
That's true. We're the farthest. Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's my question.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Of course. Are there any other questions? Are there anyone that has any experience with any of the reusables? I can tell you, when we hand them out at the events, people's faces light up. They sometimes don't even know that these new devices exist. They are excited to go. It's like a new toy for their boats, and they can play with it as soon as they get home. They don't even have to go straight to their boat. The other thing I've noticed is that we have the lower grade, like basic one that we give out for free, but we have the high tech one that has the Bluetooth and all the other special bells and whistles on display. And almost every time they'll get the free one and then they'll look and be like, well, what's that one? And so that's when sometimes that coupon really helps, because we have seen some people want that upgraded one. So let me do Robert, then Vivian.
Yes, so I had another follow-up question. You mentioned possibly applying for grant funds to purchase a magazine if we don't already have one. So I'm sorry, I don't know what my question is, but would we just apply through the normal process to just purchase the actual magazine for storage if we wanted to put one in?
Yeah, so under the CalRecycle grant, it would fall under equipment. So we would just kind of, as we work on the scope. So one of the thing with these is we kind of work around the disposal. So we know disposal is the biggest budget and the biggest cost. So are you going to have 2 events? Are you going to have 3 events? You know, maybe just one, depending on how much money you get. Then we work backwards to see, you know, let's carve out the magazine. Let's carve out the cost for the reusables. Let's carve out, you know, the cost for planning the event and education. Because to be honest, what we found in the first year at Delta Diablo is you need to do a lot of education and announcements, because you're going to pay that minimum no matter what. So doing the postcards, and honestly, we do a lot of dock walking. Over the last 2 years, Vivian's group has helped train us. We've gotten really great at it. Actually getting out there, you know, making sure the harbor master has the flyer up in the office. Dock walking means basically just going to the harbors. You've got your CPSC shirt on, maybe you have the reusables, so you look like a salesperson, but really you're just giving them a free service. But really that face interaction with the boaters has really helped. So yeah, we can pay for the magazine with the CalRecycle grants. If you're a single jurisdiction, non-rural, 50,000. If you're a JPA, rural community, or a regional, meaning you can pick a second city or a county to work together, you can get 100,000. What we're finding with the Oceanside grant, which is our first 50,000 one, is it's not really doable for marine flares. I mean, more than half the grant is going towards disposal for one event. So we do recommend finding a regional partner and going for the 100,000.
Sure. So I'm with San Mateo County, and we were part of the 2019. But I'm new to it this year. But we were part of the 2019. But the cost is for the one event was so expensive that it's hard to have another one. So I didn't know if there was a more permanent solution. We're trying to find a more permanent solution, maybe.
Well, since 2019, CPSC's role is to coordinate everyone. So now that we have, 6 jurisdictions on that one weekend, everyone splits that transportation evenly. So we've gotten it down to about 12 to 16,000 per Bay Area jurisdiction from the original, I think, over 20,000. Vivian will speak to that. But so yeah, through these coordinated events, we've gotten the cost down. And then with that small grant that we have with you guys right now with San Mateo, we've been building out kind of that education component so we can save money doing more collection and during the Cal Recycle grant because you guys have already invested. Vivian, do you want to add?
No, that's that I was going to say that San Mateo, you may want to also check with a couple of the San Mateo County Harbor districts, people like the Pilar Point Harbor, which is a big commercial fishing harbor, as well as some of the ones on the bay are very interested in having, because the harbor district is wants to solve the issue, something that is more permanent. So we have been working with the harbor master on that issue for quite a while, and they wanted to actually buy a magazine for Pilar Point Harbor. And when they realized that it's pretty expensive, they were like, oh my God, better try to think about other options. But yeah, that's totally true. And one thing that I also wanted to emphasize that Joanne mentioned is when we go to the boat shows and I bring the flare, the one that I have, which I don't release because, you know, it's my sample, but I bring it is for people to touch it and be and see that in reality they do exist. And I also, you know, mentioned that California was the first state in the nation to create that type of flare, and is a California product off of San Diego. People like also get you know, super excited. So the more that we push for that education, the better. So, okay, perfect. Yeah. So, okay, reusable flare and okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good. So let me know when, because I would love to join you there for that event. That would be fantastic.
Robert, did that help? Is there any other information? So at the Coyote Point Marina, that's just going to be the reusable. So that'll be Yalin in July. But if you're in the area, it would be great to connect. And then we'll talk offline about the HD41 and how we can scope the magazine for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that because actually I have a few more follow-ups, but too long for this this setting. Thank you.
Of course. Are there any other questions? Wonderful. I thank you everyone for joining us, and for anyone who's watching this on our YouTube. We're available. If any questions come up, you can email us at joanne@calpsc.org. You can also find us on our website, and we're happy to be a service for your marine flare management needs. Thank you, everyone. And if any other questions come up, please reach out. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Did you stop the recording?